As you guys know, healthy sexuality is an important part of health, right? When people do not have healthy sexuality, there's things that happen, and we see it in the media all the time, right? I don't need to go into those details. So I want people to just ask themselves, as much as what kind of foods feel good in my body, what is the best way for me to express myself as a sexual being and have it be healthy, and that's up to you. Hopefully you've seen from the stage already in this challenge that we don't, we're not claiming any sort of doctrine. We really want you guys to just think for yourselves and come up with what health and what thriving is for you. Melissa Fritchle has been on our stage, was it 2 times before? Once before. So this is her second time, and I'm really excited about it. She is a sex therapist, a clinical hypnotherapist, a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's a writer. She's recently published, working on her second book. And you have a great blog and a radio show as well. No radio show, well, yet. She's taught at universities, I think JFK, correct? So Melissa's around the Bay Area and getting to be way more well-known, especially with this workbook that I kind of made note on. And I'm just thrilled, so grateful that you came here today to impart your wisdom. She works with singles and couples in a lot of different parameters. So if you're drawn to work with her, of course, talk to her after, or she's on the sponsor page. But I know for me, I am inviting you here because I need you, and I'm so excited for your lecture. And she's going to leave plenty of time for Q&A, okay? And if you're shy, you can write me the question and I'll ask it. Okay.
Thanks very much. No, I think I'm Mike. Thank you. So as she said, I'm a sex therapist and sex educator, which is something that's been a passion and really dear to my heart. My mission in the world right now is to really spread the word that sex is a positive force in our life. It's a powerful and positive thing, and that it is defined by diversity, if nothing else. That sexuality is unique to each person. And as Krishnamurti would have said about religion or spirituality, there should be as many sexualities as there are humans on the planet. There isn't one. There isn't two, which is sort of the binary we're taught, right? There's multiple, infinite amounts of sexualities, ways to define yourself, ways to express yourself. So this talk today is about sexual vitality, right? How to feel that energy in your life, how to feel sexy, if that's how you want to feel, how to express yourself, how to use that life force energy that is our sexual energy in your life. And so this talk is actually inspired today by a group of Catholic priests and nuns that I worked with last February. And that may seem really surprising to you, and I may not be inspired in the ways that you think, right? But last February, I went to Kenya and worked with a group of priests and nuns from all over Africa to talk about sexual issues within the clergy. And there are many, as you've heard in the news and you might imagine. And I thought when I went there that I was going to have to really convince them that they were sexual beings. Right? I thought that they were going to fight me on that. But in fact, what I found is that they were right on board with the fact that they are sexual beings. And even though most of the people I worked with in this group had never been sexual with a partner, and most of them claimed that they hadn't masturbated or been sexual with themselves, right? They all very much said, but I'm a sexual person and have been since birth. And that this sexuality in me is something that I still need to make decisions about, channel, utilize, feel, process, and be with, right? And I was pleasantly surprised that that was our opening of our conversation. Now, don't get me wrong, there was lots of fear in the room, there was lots of shame in the room, there was lots of hate in the room sometimes when I was there with them. But I think that underlying message, the foundational message that sex is not about what behaviors we engage in, which is the way we're often taught to think about sex. Right? When we talk about sex in our culture, what we talk about is what you do, right? How to do it better, how to do it right, how to touch point A and then point B, how to do sex. But we're not taught to think about sex as something that is just part of who we are, right? these priests and nuns that I worked with got that. Because for them, they weren't engaging in sexual behavior, right? There was nothing that they were doing. They were making decisions about their sexuality based on other factors for them. And all of you can do that as well. Right? And so when I think about sexual vitality, what I actually think of is an ownership of the fact that we are sexual. Right? And that we get to express that in whatever unique way works for us at that specific unique point in our life. Right? Because the other piece that we don't talk about a lot is that the sexuality that we experienced in our early 20s in the midst of a brand new hot relationship is not the sexuality that we're going to experience most of our life. Right? And so the way we're taught to think about sex is from a 20-year-old's perspective in a brand new relationship. Not so helpful. Thanks for that. And so when it isn't happening that way, right? And when the advice that is given to people in that scenario isn't working for us, right? We're like, oh, maybe I'm just not a very sexually vital person, right? Maybe that part of my life is just kind of fading away. Oh, well, I'm just not sexy now. And that's just not the case. The case is that we have not been given a very expanded or expansive view of what sex could be. Right? And we certainly haven't been invited to think about for ourselves, what do we really want? What do we want it to be? Because maybe what you really want is to dress up in a pirate costume and rope tie your partner from the ceiling, maybe. And that's fun and that's cool. But for a lot of us, that isn't what we want. What we want is something a lot more subtle, right? What we want is sexuality that expresses some other aspects of who we are or how we feel about the person or persons that we're being sexual with, right? Or how to just feel our body. You're a really exciting group to talk about because you're here because you want to change your relationship to your physical self, right? And you've probably been having all kinds of new experiences. Some that might be scary, some that might be challenging, some that might be amazing. Hopefully you've had some really positive physical sensation over the course of the last 5-7 weeks, right? And so that piece of the fact that our body is available to feel so much sensation is our sexuality. It's the foundation there. The fact that we are born into a body that is capable of so much physical pleasure and so much connection and closeness means that we are born sexual beings, day one. Right? Before we engage in sexual things, before we define what sexuality is, before we have any questions or information about what sex is, we are sexual beings, just by the fact that we're embodied and we're built to connect, and we're built to express that. So how do we pull on that? How do we draw on that, right? Because there's so many things out there that are sapping our sexual vitality right now. So many things. And in fact, I would say the primary approach of our culture is sapping our sexual vitality as individuals. So what does that? What saps it? Well, the idea that we're supposed to know, right? This is a big one for us. I feel like what happens to us is somewhere around junior high, right? We are supposed to learn about sex. Right? And we're also, of course, at this horrible crux in which we feel like we have to be cool. And being knowing and understanding sex is part of that being cool. Right? So we immediately shut down any curiosity and pretend like we know. We walk around pretending that we know, yeah, I know about sex, got that down, and we get cavalier about it, and we laugh along to dirty jokes that we don't know what they mean at all. We're like, oh, yeah, right? And it all becomes distant from us, and superficial, and sarcastic, and we feel like we can't touch it anymore. All of a sudden, our sexuality doesn't really belong to us anymore. It's this thing we're performing. And goodness knows there's nowhere we can go to get our questions answered at that point. Our peers can't answer our questions. Most of us probably weren't talking to our parents all that much at that point. Maybe you were some of the lucky few. And adults weren't there. And more, for teens now and adolescents now, the information is edited and unavailable to them anyway. It's restricted. And so we move into our adult life with very little information, very little ability to feel feedback, but probably more damaging with our curiosity squelched, with this idea that not knowing is somehow embarrassing or shameful. When what I see in sexuality is the whole thing is not knowing. Right? Every moment you have this opportunity to have a brand new experience that you haven't had. Every partner you are with is going to experience that completely differently with you. And so the model that we're taught that tells you if you touch your partner here and you jiggle your hand at the right speed and you then go and you do that and this, that's going to work for every partner you have across the board is just wrong. It doesn't even work for yourself that way, right? What you learned about what felt good for you 2 years ago may not be what feels good for you today, and that's okay. Right? But because we're taught that we're supposed to have it all figured out, when those things change, when we're in those moments of, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, I don't know what the answer is, or I thought I knew, but it's not working this time around, we feel like we're doing something wrong. And we feel like we can't say anything about it because we stopped asking questions. We were taught we're not supposed to ask questions. Right? And so sexual vitality in part requires a curiosity, a willingness to be vulnerable and be in beginner mind at all times. Because if you were to go home and have a sexual experience tonight with yourself or with someone else, what would be really great is if you could just be mindful and present like you are in yoga or other like slow type exercise programs or things like that, to really feel what was happening. Because a lot of really amazing things are happening. But we often don't feel like we're given permission to slow down enough to feel them. Because the other thing that saps our sexual vitality is the idea that sex is about the acts that we do and performing them correctly, right? That sex is defined by a narrow set of things we're supposed to do, generally in a particular order as well, right? There's a little bit of A, if you guys are in a good mood with each other, some B, finishing with C, right? And then, that's that. Right? But there's no reason that sex has to be that way. Anything that you can do sexually, you can do in any order you want to do. You can pick and choose, right? You can utilize things in whatever way you want to do it. And so that sense of being able to define for yourself, and sex not being an act that's like, here's the map, go, stay on track, there is no map, right? Which ups our sexual vitality. You could do it whatever way you want to do it, in whatever order you want to do it, in the things that feel right for you. But again, what's most important probably is that you do it from a state of presence and awareness and mindfulness and curiosity. Because that will make you feel more sexually vital. Because if you're performing sex for someone else, it just doesn't feel very good. Who wants to do that? You don't want to do it. You want to have sex that feels like it's meaningful to you. The other thing, of course, that saps our sexual vitality is shame, and we don't have time at all today to talk about the concept of shame and sex in our culture. It's huge, of course. But one of the things that I heard about shame really recently that I thought is useful as a quick tip is that shame is the story that we're not worthy of love. And it's been so linked to our sexuality so often in really subtle ways. That just having a sexual desire, that just having sexual energy might mean you're not worthy of love. That having a sexuality that doesn't look the way it's been shown in mass media might mean you're not worthy of love, right? And so reclaiming our sexual vitality means saying, I'm worthy of this. Right? I'm worthy of it with myself, to spend that time giving myself pleasure, getting to know my body, helping my body to be relaxed and be comfortable, and I'm worthy of that with someone else, or multiple someone else's, if that's the space that someone's in their life at this point, right? That you're worthy of this because it is good for you. And that's an interesting piece, you know, and Lita and Michelle, I know, really care about this. Sex is part of a good health life. It's good for us. Our genitals, our sexual organs, are just as important as other organs in our body, right? They can be kept vital, they can be kept alive and juicy and ready to go, or they can be ignored, right? Like other parts of our body, right? Healthy sexuality, orgasms and pleasure can give us increased immunity. It can lead to longer lifespans for many people. There's lots of studies that it reduces certain disease profiles for people. And of course, it's good for our relationships, which that opens up a whole nother realm of scientific information about happy relationships, and close relationships are good for our health. So yes, if you're worthy of it, if you're worthy to come here and do a great program like this, right? Then hopefully you also feel that you're worthy of having sexuality be a part of your life, of honoring the fact that you're a sexual person and that energy that you put out there. Part of that shame that I talk about with clients a lot is that fear that if I put out sexual energy, whatever that might look like, right, that that's going to bring something negative to me. And it has for many people. Let's be totally clear about that. Right? There is a fear about that, what that might bring to you. And that's something that I think we need to fight against as a culture, right? That we can put out sexual energy in a grounded, affirmative, integral way and say yes or no to what comes at us, right? The invitations and the information that comes our way. We get to make a decision about that. And so being confident, right? Our sexuality, that ability to feel pleasure in our body, right? But also that ability to feel like we're someone who can have that flow with other people, that can share energy, that can give pleasure and receive pleasure all at once, can give us confidence in every area of our life, right? And when it's not working, as all of us have had at some point or another, it can also deplete energy in every point in our life. But people who feel their sexuality is working, whatever that means, which doesn't mean, by the way, that their erections are working or that they're having orgasms every time or any of those things, right? It doesn't mean they're STD free. It doesn't mean that they're in a perfect relationship. Their sexuality working, right, by my definition, means that they feel like they have a sense of what they want, that they can ask for it, that they can talk about it, that they're willing to figure it out, and that they're willing to grow and change, right? For people who feel that way, it kind of boils you up throughout life. You feel like you have a little more confidence backing you, right? And when your sexuality belongs to you, right, then you have that always available to you. One more thing that saps our sexuality, our sexual vitality in our culture is the idea that sex is something someone else does to us, right? And we have to wait for a partner to receive that lovely gift, right? And don't get me wrong, partnered sex is great. And a partner who knows how to please you and has figured that out and has communicated with you is a gift, for sure. But the truth is we can have a sexual relationship with ourselves. And in fact, we do. It's the longest sexual relationship we're going to have. That self, it's there for everything you're going to do, partnered or unpartnered, right? And so to know that you have a right to that you could touch yourself like a lover does, that you can give yourself attention and pleasure, that you can fill yourself up with affection and the sense that you're beautiful or handsome or sexy or vibrant or whatever you want to be, that you know how to explore your own body to give yourself pleasure, ups our sexual vitality all the time. And it ups our life vitality all the time. And it's always available. The thing about being an embodied person, right, is our body has limitations. It's one of the most harsh areas in our life where we face limitations. There are some things about the body that you were born into that is never going to allow you to do certain things that you may have wanted to do. And you may not look the way that you think that you want to look. Right? And we're going to age. And we're going to have injuries and illnesses, and all of those things are happening. But one thing that doesn't change is our body's availability for pleasure. How we orgasm might change. Our experience of orgasm might change. The sexual positions we can get in might change. Don't get me wrong. All of that is true. But the ability to feel pleasure, the fact that our skin can feel touch, right, doesn't leave us. It's something that could always, always be there for you. And it is a gift. And it's something to help you. And so how to claim that for yourself is part of that sexual vitality. And it's not what people usually think they're going to hear from a sex therapist or sex educator. Right? I've got plenty of information about sexual positions and sexual toys and things that you can do. And some people, that's what they want and that's what they need. But most often what we want and need is to be able to have conversations with ourselves about our sexuality. Most often what we need is to be able to turn that attention inward for a while and say, oh, I'm actually the expert on sexuality for me. Right? Not Cosmo magazine, not your Tango online, not even that sex therapist up there, right? But you. And when you give yourself that permission, sexual vitality flows more freely. It just takes a bunch of the crud out of the way to say, oh, I know what I want somewhere in there. I may not know it right now at this moment, because it can be confusing. It's very confusing. There's a lot going on and a lot of voices in our head and a lot of people who have influenced our sexuality, right? And by the way, sexuality isn't, it isn't black or white. So there may be things that you like that you're not so happy you like, or things that you're like, I like this, but I like that. Those two things don't go together. How does that work? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Right. To have that openness and say, I can trust whatever information comes from me, and then trust that you can communicate about that and build a life that reflects that is a great thing. And I'm not saying it's easy, because our culture has not supported that historically. And so that's why a lot of us kind of have to fight to claim that back. A lot about sexuality is about reclaiming it from all those voices out there, all the things that shut it down, all the things that told you it's not okay to just figure it out as you go, right? To change, to transform, all of that. And so when we reclaim it, our sexual vitality grows and grows. It flows more freely. We get all of those good things. So how do we be sexually vital? Well, first off, we get really curious. First off, we learn how to listen to our body, which hopefully you're all doing, right? You can exercise in a way where you're not hearing your body at all, right? You can exercise right on through an injury, right? And learn how to turn that down, and a lot of us do. I used to work with professional athletes as a massage therapist, and I thought when I was doing that they were going to be the most attuned to their body people ever, right? What I learned is actually that they weren't that attuned to the sensations of their body because they had to ignore it to perform at such a high level. They had to ignore pain pretty regularly. They were very in control of their bodies, right? Which I'm not always. I'm very clumsy and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, that's amazing, right? But the downside of it was that they also would say, I don't experience pleasure as much either. So you're in this program where you're learning all these different ways of exercise, in part because that encourages you to really feel your body when you're doing it. And feel what feels good for you, right? To pick, you're gonna, at the end of this program, be like, I like that and that and that. Those were amazing for me. Those are this thing, that thing, not so much, right? Same stuff for sexuality. Right. But you have to listen to your body first. Does this feel good? Do I like it? Do I feel comfortable and relaxed and in flow when I do it? Do I feel inspired and excited when I do it? Do I feel that tingle, whatever that is for you? So listening is part one. Being curious is part one, all linked together, right? The other piece is, of course, accepting change, which I talked about already, right? There's limitations, our bodies will change, our relationships will change. Right? And the roles we play will change and impact how we feel about our sexuality as well, right? It's different seeing yourself as a sexual person when you're a mother than when you were a co-ed, right? It's different when you're a middle-aged person than when you were 20. It's different as a professional than somewhere else in your life, right? And so how to incorporate all these roles, all these parts of you into a sexual picture now, right? And how to accept change. You're not gonna figure it out and like be able to be done, like, okay, got that sex stuff down, don't have to worry about it anymore, right? It just doesn't work like that. Sex, like everything else in your life, requires an ongoing commitment to really make it vital and vibrant. And it's okay to take breaks for a time and be like, I'm gonna let that just roll on its own, take care of itself for a while, right? But to continually come back and check in and say, what's the state of my sexuality right now? What needs to be expressed? What needs to be shifted? What needs to happen now is really important. And that's part of that accepting change, that some of the things that may have worked and been wonderful for you won't be available, and yet there's lots that is. And so how to recreate continually yourself, your sexuality, your sexual relationships. The other piece is just clearly making space for your sexuality. Right? To be sexually vital, you need to have some space and time in your life to do it. One of the main things I talk about in couples therapy with nearly every couple here in California, right, is when do you have time to even spend time, just the two of you, much less even having sex, getting naked, getting able to do all that, right? And what I hear from a lot of people is like, oh, well, maybe between like the news and bed, there's a half hour between like 11:30 and midnight that we were trying to shove this sexuality in, right? Like that's gonna work. No, it's not gonna work. Sexuality and awareness takes time, right? It means that you have to consciously make space for it. And not just space in terms of space in your work week, space in your day, right? But space in terms of having a healthy enough body, taking care of yourself, being well fed, being rested, right? Space for the conversations that need to happen around sexuality as well. Because contrary to porn, not a lot of us like open the door and see someone and are like, yes, let's go, I'm ready. Right? Not a lot of us. Again, maybe when we were teenagers, right? But most of us need some time to have that simmer in us. Most of us need time and space in our life to feel like we're sensual beings, right? To drive from here to there, to rush around, to eat this, to shove that in your mouth, to blah, 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 leaves very little space for sensuality. And yet, we can feel the shift in the air temperature out there, and it feels beautiful on my skin. I could take a moment to drink something that feels good in my mouth, a creamy pumpkin latte, and I can take the flavor in, right? And I can feel the warmth moving through my body. And I can take those moments, and by doing that, I'm making space for my sexuality. Does that seem strange? It's not, because it's all linked. My sexuality is linked to the fact that I can sensually experience my world. And then I can bring that to myself or my partner when I get that private time, right? And we can make that space. But making space means making space to enjoy, to feel pleasure with all of our senses. Making space means making space for you to be a person who is deserving of attention, right? Who can flirt if you want to, who can make a strong statement, who can communicate to someone about something that's important and real and true for you. All of that is making space. And a lot of times we have goals to do those things, but we don't link them to sexuality. But when you're changing your life and you're shifting things up, your sexuality is in there too. And you have permission from me, anyway, to make that important. To say yes to pleasure, to yourself, to that mysterious thing that it's hard for me to define up here of like what it is to express who you are sexuality in the world. To feel like you are confident in that way, which is going to look one way for you and one way for you and one way for you and something completely different for me. And that's okay. So the last piece I'm going to say before we take questions about, sexual vitality is that piece again of believing you're worthy and being as interested in yourself as you are in your sexual partners. The other thing that we're taught about dating, right, when we're in our early 20s and doing all that, or even back to like 16 magazine or whatever those things are, is be really interested in the person that you're trying to get, right? Be really interested in them. Figure them out so that you can do what they want, give them what they want, try to, make sure that they like you. But from that moment forward, we're not encouraged to think about ourselves, to be as curious about ourselves. To, when you start dating someone, those early times when you're laying in bed late at night and you're telling each other and you're asking your partner about maybe about their sexual history if you want to know that. You have to decide for yourself if you want to know that, but you're asking about old stories and you're maybe asking what their first times were like or things like that, and they're sharing with you and you're thinking deeply about these stories that they're telling you. And you're taking them in as meaningful and important. What doesn't happen is us doing that with ourselves. Right? We often revisit our old sexual stories through a lens of like, oh, that was horrible, right? I mean, the human mind has a big failing, which is that it is more likely to remember negative information than positive. Right? And you've probably experienced that if you've ever had feedback from somebody, ever had a critique or a work feedback session, and they're like, all these good things, and then they tell you the one, like, here's your growing edge, right, thing. And that's all you can remember, right? If you think about those kind of things from years ago, I bet you only remember those things and you're like vaguely kind of could put together the good things that were said. The human mind works that way, and we do that with our own sexual stories, right? And for good reason. They're vulnerable. Like the times when we've been sexually wounded or hurt are very, very vulnerable. And they're important for us to hold on to protect ourselves, right? Because we don't want that to repeat. But there's a lot of other sexual stories as well, potentially, of things that went well or things that were confusing or times when you learned something new or different about yourself or people or bodies. And so to let yourself reprocess your own stories is actually really useful, because how you see it today might be very different than how you saw it back then. And those stories change. They change in the way we tell them. They change in the way we think about them. And so it's okay to give yourself permission to go back and retell and re-look at stories. Figure out, what did I learn about sex? How did I learn about it? What was I taught in my family of origin about sex? What was I taught in the early dating? And do I still believe those things? Because the problem with unexamined stories, right, is we just sort of walk around with them as true, and we haven't given ourselves permission to say, you know what? Actually, I don't buy that anymore. And I'm going to consciously build a different life and build new information and look at the times when that wasn't true and recreate my sexuality for myself. So sexual vitality is about knowing yourself. Right? It's about saying, I get to look at this part of me, let it change, let it transform, let it grow, like I let myself grow in all these other ways. And again, that doesn't mean that you grow by doing increasingly more kinky things or whatever. Maybe it does, right? But maybe it doesn't. It just means you grow by being more conscious and aware. Which brings me to my little plug, right? I have a workbook coming out, as they mentioned, which is the Conscious Sexual Self Workbook. And it's going to be out in probably 3 weeks up on Amazon. And what it is it walks you through your life, right? And your sexual stories. And the things you learn and the things you believe, and it invites you to journal about them and do exercises about them and sort of revision it, right? How to be conscious of you and your sexuality. And so hopefully you guys will follow me. You can sign up in the back to get my quarterly newsletter. I have a Facebook page, which is a Sex Positive Life is the Facebook handle, or if you just type in Conscious Sexual Self, that's the name. And I have all kinds of information about sexuality, tips, inspirational quotes, and also upcoming things about events and the book and all of that. And I work here in Capitola, so you can also reach out to me that way if that feels appropriate for you. So again, I'm wishing you all sexual vitality, right? And I would love for all of us to walk out of this room and have our own unique version of that for the world to just be like, wow, that is amazing, right? So none of us have to do it like anybody else, and we have that freedom to just go and be sexually vibrant people. So thank you very much. And I am available for questions for a little bit, so anybody?
Don't be shy.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about Tantra sexuality? And is that something that you work with clients?
I work with incorporating spirituality with sexuality with clients a lot. So she asked about Tantra sexuality, which is a form of spiritual sexuality that roots back in India. And so I know about it in practice, but I'm not a tantrika, so it's not a form that I teach. But there are great people, luckily, in this area that I can refer people to. But I do work with people a lot on how to blend your spirituality, whatever that may be, with sexuality. Tantra is a great example of inviting people to slow down, right? And have sex be about connection and about sort of more of a ritualized awareness, mindfulness, even meditation for some people type of practice. And so for a lot of people, they do find that having some way that they set up space so sexuality feels sacred is really helpful for them. But there's lots of ways to do that, right? Tantra is one. So, yeah. Questions? Oh, question in the back.
Just curious about blood flow, exercise, in like male infants.
Yes.
Like, I've noticed my libido going up since I started exercising, and I've looked into that. Like, oh, that's interesting. And it's like, if you don't exercise, that's one of the leading causes of male infants. I want to know
Yes.
about.
Yeah, so he's asking about blood flow and exercise and male erections, right, and how that works, and inability to get erections. And it's true, sex is a cardio event, right, particularly for men. So erections require blood flow to that area. It's completely about that. And so if our cardiovascular system isn't working well, a lot of times erectile dysfunction is the canary in the coal mine about health issues, right? It's the first thing that people start to notice, is that their erections are not as solid as they would like them, they're not as, on the spot as they would like them, or they don't last, or all kinds of issues, right? Blood flow also happens for female bodies as well. All the lubrication, all the swelling that happens to increase arousal is a blood flow related issue. So anything that impacts that impacts our sexuality. So a lot of you may have found that as you've upped your exercise, your libido also has raised, right? Unless you're completely exhausted. But hopefully they're pacing you enough that that hasn't happened. But yes, anything that increases our health often increases our libido, right? Eating well increases our libido, and we need that sense of blood flow on a regular basis to happen to keep our bodies functioning well. So, yeah, there's lots to say about erections, but that's a whole nother talk. So.
Go Drew!
can be available for private questions and that too.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Beverly, can you please come up? Vanna, nice.
Thank you, Melissa. That was great. I was really happy to hear that you were a massage therapist. That just like goes right, yeah. So, start with yourself. So my tagline I chose for this card, I don't know, you've seen me around. I'm a massage therapist. I've been doing it for 16 years over the hill, and I'm here in Santa Cruz. And positive body image through touch. And I just cannot explain to you how important massage has been in my life for the last 20 years. I mean, I was out of relationship for probably 6 years by choice, and I used to get regular massage all the time before going into becoming a massage therapist because I felt the power of it. So you all have been working really, really hard, and I'm sure you might be feeling a little achy and maybe some injuries or overuse, and I would love to get my hands on you. So anyway, I printed up some cards, and you can give them to your friends and family. You can pass them out. You know, it's $10 off. I'm over at the OHF office, which is right on 17th and Portola. And so if you have any questions about massage, let me know. Thanks.
I had the privilege of having a session with Beverly Block, and I'll say it was fantastic, just really, really great, right at the level that I needed it to be, and it was just really great. So I highly would recommend, giving that a try, giving Bev a try. Guys, the body work is so important, isn't it? Like that's again back to the self-care. It's like we have to take care of our bodies because we're using them every single day, and we really count on them to show up for us, but we need to take the time sometimes to check in and make sure that we're doing that self-care. I get body work regular all the time. I get my chiropractic adjustments, I get my acupuncture, and I get my massage. And that's what I do to take care of myself so that I can get up and perform at the level that I want to perform at every day. So thank you, Bev. $10 off is awesome.
And, Thomas, you're here. Thomas, come on up. I was looking for you. Thomas is babysitting Tima for the week, it looks like. Come on up. So some of you guys have already gotten on Thomas's table, and he's babysitting, so he couldn't bring his table today, but maybe next time. Thomas have you been part of the challenge before? No. Oh, this is your first time. So you probably know him from the initial fitness testing day. Hopefully you got on his table. If not, I know he'll be here again at another health lecture. But will you talk about your body work?
Yeah, my name is Tomas, and I have been doing body work for about 14 years. And I hear you're a body worker as well? Yeah. Awesome, right on. I don't think there can be too many of us here because as I heard bits and pieces of the sex lecture, there's a way in which we kind of deny ourselves that because we're going to put the money elsewhere or time elsewhere, and we really need to take advantage of people like her and I to really, break something free in your body. The type of work that I do is I do intuitive guided hands massage. It's body work. When you come to me, you'll never get the same massage twice or the same body work session twice. There's a way in which when I put my hands on people, I get messages, and so I just deliver them to the person who's on my table, and from the feedback I've got, it's over 95% accuracy. It's not anything that I really honed or anything. It's well, I have to the point where I was scared of it for a long time, but then I finally learned how to use it, and it's a way that I have of just being a channel for the person who's on my table. And so when you come to me, you lay on the table, and when the messages come, they come in form of a chant, or I was raised conservative Christian, and so sometimes they come through in Bible verses, which I translate for you as well. It could be a song, anything. And so what I encourage you to do is just find someone who can do body work for you that you trust, somebody that you know, somebody that you love, and start to receive that on a regular basis. And I found, only because of going through massage school about 14 years ago, that when I got body work on a regular basis, wow, how liberating it was. My body woke up and broke free of a lot of different things and challenges that I was having that I thought were going to be there pretty much for life. And so, yeah, please come look one of us up and get some work done on your body. I have a special going for the people who are in the Stanley Cruz Challenge, so if you're interested in getting some work done from me, come and see me, and I can come to your house as well to do the body work, okay? Thank you.